May we all have the strength to shut out the alluring noise that gets pumped into our head so that we can ascend to our higher purpose. Today's topic is on the theme of restraint and its corresponding visual motifs throughout the SnyderVerse. According to Oxford Languages Dictionary, to restrain means 1. To prevent someone or something from doing something. Keep under control or within limits. 2. Prevent oneself from displaying or giving way to a strong urge or emotion. And 3. Deprive someone of freedom of movement or personal liberty. Throughout the examples given from the SnyderVerse, it will be a good exercise to keep in mind the following distinction: the outward restraint of the other, as opposed to the inward restraint of the self viewed as restraint over the emotional or impulsive self in particular. For any given example, one may think about who or what is doing the restraining and who or what is being restrained. In the context of self-restraint, it is one aspect of the self restraining another aspect of the self. For example, the higher spiritual self restraining your animalistic lower self. However, it should be noted that self-restraint need not always be associated with what I would call good, and we'll see examples of that. Lastly, to aid in this meditative process, we list several synonyms of restrain. Forbid.
Next time they shine your light in the sky, don't go to it.
Restrict. Subdue. Bind. Tie up. Stifle. Muzzle. Constrain.
Take him away.
We start here with Jor-El being detained or restrained by Zod's men. Zod here is imposing his authority by an outward show of strength over Jor-El and the council. Jor-El, in accordance with his ideal of hope for people to be a force for good, was using a restrained approach to effect change with the council and Krypton. This ideal is inherently limiting since it meant giving the council a chance to make the right choices on their own. This is further highlighted by juxtaposition with Zod's approach, which is to use force and aggression to effect change. Zod is imposing outward power and authority, restraining the council and Jor-El, whereas Jor-El is, relatively speaking, practicing self-control in adherence to his ideal of hope.
There's still hope. I have held that hope in my hand.
Take him away.
We jump to a similar visual, but here we have Clark being taken in handcuffs. The handcuffs are a clear outward sign of restraint, but interestingly, or perhaps ironically, instead of being a sign of restraint of the military on him, here they signify Clark's self-restraint. Lois points this out when she says, "You let them handcuff you." So in contrast to Jor-El being taken against his will, Clark is being taken in accordance with his will. He no longer hovers above the military, he chooses to walk with them and even sit down. We note that upon doing so, he is able to speak with his feminine counterpart and speak with the military. We have moved from an outward show of forced aggression and phallic displays to the contrasting attributes of restraint, dialogue, the feminine, the cool-headed and subdued approach of reaching an understanding. We've seen him exercise such self-restraint already during the flashback of him being confronted by the bully. Here he is presented with the goading forces of the unrestrained phallus, with the adolescent rage and bull-headed tumescent masculinity on full display. It is clear he exemplifies the contrasting cardinal virtue of temperance or self-control. Clark's facial expression shows a part of him wants to act out, but the other part of him is restraining or taming that urge. Visually, we see him holding himself back, using the fence as a grounding structure, possibly indicating his taming of the phallus.
I wanted to hit that kid. I wanted to hit him so bad.
I know you did. I mean, part of me even wanted you to, but then what? Make you feel any better?
Earlier, Clark is shown in a similar situation, but with an adult bully. Here he exercises self-restraint, again, especially in contrast to Ludlow's animalistic timid masculinity. We now draw our attention to the painting of a wolf just behind this group of men. This provides the strong sense that we are dealing with alpha male posturing. We note that Clark's tendency toward self-restraint is encouraged by the feminine pulling him back from this confrontation. There is an extreme example of self-restraint when Superman fights the Kryptonians. Both the Kryptonians and the US military attack Superman. However, it is clear that throughout the fight, Superman has made a conscious choice to show restraint in his response to the US military, and instead fights against the Kryptonians. The Kryptonians embody the force trying to suppress or hold down Superman. So, as the Kryptonians restrain him, he restrains himself in response to the military, therefore embodying the idea of hope in the potential of every person to be a force for good. The time during the fight and up to the point where he steps out is the time Jor-El speaks of when he says, "In time they will join you in the sun." So the time part is really important. This ideal of hope thus requires patience, temperance, and self-control or self-restraint. His hope is rewarded when they realize he is not their enemy. Here, an old bully became a friend or an ally. An interesting side note is, according to Oxford Languages, bully is probably from the Middle Dutch word bol, meaning lover or brother. The original use of the word bully was a term of endearment. It later became a familiar form of address to a male. Last point we make here is that since the Kryptonians are genetically engineered, they are more constrained to act on biological impulse. They are bound in their ways, so to speak. Because of the natural-born randomness in humanity, this element of chance naturally allows for the ability to change or evolve. We can see another example of restraint being coupled with the hope and faith that another will act on their own will. Earlier, when Clark is in school, we can juxtapose the teacher's response to Martha's. We see the teacher as towering, aggressive, unrestrained, and using outward force, all suggesting of her lack of faith that Clark will come out on his own volition. Martha shows the counter-approach. She lowers herself, is soft, graceful, gentle, gives him what he needs in the hope that he will choose to come out on his own. And she overall practices restraint in comparison to the teacher. It should also be noted that when Clark is met with aggression, he responds with aggression. And when he's met with speech and softness, he as well responds in kind. Therefore, the juxtaposition between the mother figure of the teacher and, of course, the mother figure of Martha is extended to the response of Clark to each. This is, of course, reflected when John Kent finds himself on both sides of the pushing and pulling approach. In his care for Clark as a father, he understandably wants to protect him over other kids, as any caring parent would for their own child. A lot of people misinterpret this scene because they're viewing it from the perspective of themselves, an audience member comfortable in their chair watching a movie with a sense of certainty that Clark is going to figure things out. They're not interpreting it from the perspective of a caring father who is uncertain of where Clark's future leads but wants the best for him. As such, John Kent was clearly scared for Clark's well-being and lashed out aggressively.
I know you did, but we talked about this. Right? Right? We talked about this. You have... Oh, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe. There's more at stake here than just our lives, Clark, or the lives of those around us.
This is juxtaposed to John Kent showing the more compassionate and softer approach of a father and his love for his son, reasoning with Clark and opening up, showing why he is scared for Clark's well-being.
I don't want to be.
And I don't blame you, son. It'd be a huge burden for anyone to bear. But you're not just anyone, Clark, and I have to believe that you were sent here for a reason.
Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?
You are my son.
This is the more feminine approach that allows a reluctant Clark to at least reach an understanding with Jonathan. This approach of showing love and compassion requires faith in Clark's ability to handle the truth of his origin.
And even if it takes you the rest of your life, you owe it to yourself to find out what that reason is.
Another example can be seen in Zack Snyder's Justice League when Diana speaks with Victor. She guides him, tries to reason with him. She is very graceful and non-aggressive, much like Martha's practice of restraint.
I shut myself off from everyone. But I had to learn to open back up again. The truth is, I'm still working on it.
Oh my goodness.
Where's the cyborg?
His name is Victor. We met, spoke. Give him time.
She says to Bruce, give him time, again signaling the idea of hope, that one will stand for what's right on their own free will. This restrained approach is rewarded when Victor, given time, joins the team to fight. We can juxtapose the merits of this restrained approach to a more forceful approach in BVS when Lois Lane tries to get Secretary Swanwick to help. Note that whenever she is aggressive, she runs into strong opposition.
Experts at the Pentagon can't ID it. We haven't been told the truth.
Here's the truth. A reporter got greedy for a scoop and went where she shouldn't have. Superman acted like some rogue combatant to rescue her, and people died. Don't invent a conspiracy theory to put back his halo. Or yours.
Lex Luthor.
He also had private security contractors at the desert compound.
Go on record.
Not a chance.
You need proof.
No, it needs to run now. Before the hearing, if Superman knows it might change what he says.
I am not going to risk the paper so that you can pass notes in class to the man that rescued you.
When she takes the more passive and restrained approach, allowing Swanwick to make his own choice on the matter, operating on the hope that he will do the right thing, she gets a much better response.
I don't have a halo over me, Mr. Secretary. I went into the desert, people died. It keeps me awake, it should. If you think that Superman is a murderer, then throw it away. But I don't believe you think that.
We see a similar dynamic between Lois and Perry in the newsroom, here and in Man of Steel.
Prototype military rounds to Tuareg fighters in the Sahara.
You're the reporter, tell me.
I think that the U.S. government is arming the rebels while claiming to support the elected government.
The ask, Lois.
Flight to D.C. tonight, couple of days there.
Go.
Coach, no extra legroom.